Welcome to this very special episode of the Hali Hewa Podcast with your host, Abigail Kima. At Hali Hewa Podcast, we're proud to bring you a platform where you can hear from African experts. And today we'll be speaking about AI for sustainable agriculture. And I know most of us have probably only interacted with AI through ChatGPT. So when you see those very well-written emails, you just know this is ChatGPT at work. But I have the pleasure of hosting two amazing guests on the podcast today from the ATPS, and they're going to tell us more about what that is about and exactly what they're doing in their work. So welcome, Dr. Nicholas, and welcome, Joel. It's lovely to have you on the podcast.
Thank you very much.
Well, Joel is joining us virtually, and we have Dr. Nicholas in the studio today. And so I'll invite you, Dr. Nicholas, to tell us more about ATPS. What are you about?
Thank you, Abigail, for having me. My name is Nicholas Ozor. I am the Executive Director of the African Technology Policy Studies Network, what you call ATPS. So ATPS is a transdisciplinary network of researchers, policymakers, civil society actors, and the private sector actors that promote the generation, the dissemination, the use, and mastery of science, technology, and innovation for Africa's development, for environmental sustainability, and global inclusion. So ATPS works through national chapters located in 30 countries, but with institutional partnership in the 54 countries that is in Africa. Our headquarters happen to be here in Nairobi, Kenya, where we also enjoy diplomatic immunities and privileges accorded other international organizations of our status. So every year, because science, technology, and innovation is a broad area, we usually do what we call strategic plan for 5 years minimum. And in that strategic plan, we identify core areas where, working with our stakeholders, we have over 5,000 network members of the ATPS spread across Africa and also the entire world. So we work to identify what are the priority areas that they think that we should focus on. And the current strategic plan that we are working on, working with, has identified some key areas, including agriculture, food and nutrition, energy, especially renewable energy, environment and climate change, and health innovations. So these 4 thematic priority areas are the ones guiding the work we do currently. So delving straight into the topic of the day, which is artificial intelligence in agriculture and food system, what you also call AI. It is because we have prioritized agriculture and food systems amongst our priority areas for work. And we have been looking at, because we are a science, technology, and innovation organization, we have been looking at emerging technologies that can be used to increase productivity and production, and also ensure nutrition, adequate nutrition in that sector. And that's why the most emerging technology, the artificial intelligence, is now one of the tools we are using to promote productivity in the sector.
Great. Thank you so much for sharing that. And I like the fact that you said it is based on research and you identified some of the key priority areas within the continent of Africa. And it's impressive to hear you're in 30 countries within Africa.
Yes.
And I understand you have a specific project on this particular topic on sustainable agriculture.
Yeah.
Also tell us more about that.
Okay, so this particular project looks at artificial intelligence in agriculture and food systems. So the goal is to advance the development, the deployment, the scaling of homegrown, responsible artificial intelligence in agriculture and food systems. I'm very particular about some keywords in those in that particular project topic. Homegrown. Homegrown means we want to foster and promote AI that is developed from our people, that has identified the priority needs of our people, that is directed towards local content in Africa, not just if they come and give you AI in the development of maybe Apple. We don't produce much of Apple here. So we have to talk about our staple food crops, which if we apply AI to, we can have increased production or productivity for those homegrown or crops and livestock that are of interest to Africa, not those ones that are not of our particular interest. So the other one is responsible. Responsible in the sense that AI can be very disruptive. And if you don't control how it is used, people can deploy it in achieving negative impacts or effects, which can cost the economy some huge costs. And therefore, the kind of or the type of AI we are promoting is the one that is homegrown, building endogenous capacity of our people. We can get technology transfer from outside, but it must adapt to our own context and content to make it relevant to our local farmers, to our smallholder farmers. And it must be responsible. And maybe when we talk about stakeholder impacts, we talk more about how we can achieve this responsibility. Because government need to play a lot of role in ensuring that the AI is responsible by using policies, regulations, laws. Where that is not in place, then you expect some danger. Why people always say, oh, AI can do this bad thing or the other bad thing. So, an AI, if I may just use this opportunity to define it, is the ability of machines to perform some cognitive functions that can only be done by human mind, such as reasoning, such as perception, such as ability to think and solve problems. So AI can do all these things, especially also use its sense to solve societal challenges in the environment and so on and so forth. So this is the AI we are talking about, and most importantly, the responsible AI is the AI that is lawful, AI that is lawful, AI that respects my privacy, your privacy, AI that is ethical, AI that respects the culture and norms of the people. So that is the kind of AI we want to develop, or we are developing already because we are working on the ground in Africa.
Great.
Thank
you for defining that. I was actually going to ask you to do that. And you've said you're very keen on the words that you use. So homegrown and responsible. And of course, a lot of other key stakeholders have to come to play for this to be possible. Yes. And to Joel, as the project manager, I believe, joining us all the way from Nigeria, correct me if I'm wrong, I'd love you to, introduce yourself and also tell our audience or bring our audience into an understanding of how you're actually using AI to transform, agriculture and food systems, and maybe give us a couple of examples or stories that you've seen that have worked. So welcome, Joel.
Thank you. I am Joel Nwakaire. I'm a postdoctoral research fellow at ATPS on an assignment in Nigeria. I've been in Nairobi for a long time, but just on a mission to Nigeria. The project manager. It's a privilege to be the project manager of the Artificial Intelligence for Agriculture and Food Systems Innovation Research Network. It has been a very wonderful experience, coordinating the project and also seeing real scenarios where artificial intelligence have been applied. And one thing is interesting is the capacity of Africans to key into the use of artificial intelligence in food, increasing food sustainability. Well, we have had some scenarios. I want to give you a background to the project we have. We have 10 projects cutting across 8 countries in Africa. We have 2 projects in Kenya. We have 2 projects in Tanzania. We have one in Malawi, which is Southern Africa. Then we have a project in Nigeria. We have a project in Ghana, and we have a project in Senegal, and one more project in Cape Verde. So these projects are distributed across the Southeast and West Africa. So it has been also interesting to learn about these projects because they give us the confidence that Africans can actually do it. We are looking at the decolonial approach, and that is why we're saying it should be homegrown. A homegrown technology are the decolonial approach to mainstreaming technology, for African use. So that what we now mean is that this project have collected Africa's unique data sets around plant data sets, voice, farmers, and data from cloud, please weather information that will be deployed in the cloud for decision making, for prediction, yield prediction. And this is around our core focus areas: food availability, access, food utilization, and stability. These are 4 areas we are looking at. They are actually the 4 components of food security. And the executive director have been very emphatic about this responsible development. And one thing again that we have tried to do that is coming out good is that we have followed also gender equality and social inclusion approach. And that is, we were intentional about making sure that we have more women get involved in the development. We first of all conducted an initial study that showed that it's just 30% of women are in AI and 70% are men. So we wanted to bridge this gap. And so we're intentional about selecting 5 women-led groups and 5 men-led groups. And we can say that the women-led groups are performing well. So they are actually our future. So now let's go to some specific about the project. We have a project in Ghana, and that project in Ghana uses a deep learning algorithm to diagnose diseases in cassava, in maize, in cashew, and tomato. Now, it's turning out to be a tool that will assist farmers to do a real-time early detection of diseases. And then they will also understand what are the possible solutions. So it will also suggest possible solutions. So for the first time, farmers will have access to real-time monitoring of their plant and also get advisory services. We also have a very interesting project in Kenya. That is a project from Manzi Geospatial Research. And that project have looked at monitoring and early warning system, especially the growth of Tuta absoluta, especially it's a known pest around tomato farming in Kenya. And it's doing a lot trying to use temperature and environmental parameters to understand what conditions can give rise to this pest coming up. And then once that condition is met, an alarm is set off and farmers can take steps to make sure that that condition does not continue. So they can monitor. Then in also detection, they have the ability to say, oh, based on these environmental conditions, which is a deep learning model where you collect data set that can actually do what the human does. For instance, I give an illustration to make it on us understand how artificial intelligence is. A child grows up. A child does not understand this or that. But over time, the child continues to acquire information from the environment. Over time, the child can say, this is A based on shape, and the child can say, this is B based on shape. So the child over time was trained on a data set. And that data set were the communication that was given on shapes. A is for apple. So that is that. So these tools are being used. And we can say that finally on the technology, we had a very beautiful engagement yesterday in Nigeria during our Gender Innovation Challenge project, which were mainstreaming in Nigeria. And we had the Nigerian project demonstrate real-time detection. So they had an independent system that monitors plants. And anywhere you are, even if you're in Kenya, you can see real-time the health status of your farm. It was wonderful seeing it. So the farmers were so much excited seeing this. And so these are some of the projects taking place in a short form. So thank you very much.
Thank you so much, Joel. Those are very interesting tools. I mean, I am also using this as an opportunity to learn about AI because, as you said, Dr. Nicholas, a lot of people are still very sort of pushing AI away because, of course, as you said, without the regulation, then it means the aspect of responsibility is missed. And of course, everything comes with, I believe, when you're going about a project, you want to see the impact, especially to the people that you've so passionately talked about, who are the community members. And, you know, as you said, homegrown, that is tailor-made to, satisfy our needs. And so would you say over the couple of, I don't know how many years that you've been working on this project, would you say you've seen real impact, especially to those smallholder farmers? And how receptive are they to this particular technology? And would you say you've seen any sort of impact with the work that you've been doing?
Thank you very much, Abigail. I can tell you that this project and AI as a whole is an emerging area.
Mm-hmm.
And because it is new, and this our project started only 2 years ago,
Mm-hmm.
It is too early to measure impact.
Mm-hmm.
Impact is the outcome of an intervention. So the intervention is still ongoing. We are still building the capacity of these innovators who are deploying, developing, and at a small level, scaling. So measuring impact will be difficult at this stage because it will be better to measure impact when these farmers that they have trained on how they can use their mobile phones to monitor their farms, even when they are not within the geographical location, and as well know the health status of their crops and trigger maybe irrigation and be able to know when there is pests or insect attack and because of local conditions, and then be able to now address those. So when they start doing them
Mm-hmm.
by themselves and do it for some time, you can then measure impact. But for now, and for this our project, it is still it is still at the stage of development and deployment, like 90%. Development and deployment, we can say we've developed, we are deploying, and then after a while, we can then measure the impact this has had. Remember, impact we are talking about can be measured by farmers saying, previously, before I adopted this technology, I was harvesting 1 ton of maize or 1 ton of tomatoes. With this technology, I am now able to harvest 2 tons. You see, it is clear.
Yes.
You can say they have adopted and deployed the technology, and the impact it has had on their production is that there is increased productivity.
Mm-hmm.
Increased productivity can as well be as a result of the fact that the insect pests, which we are supposed to have devastated that crop, have been prevented from devastating it. using AI. And therefore, the losses they would have encountered, they no longer encountered it. And they are now able to preserve and harvest all. Okay, even when they have harvested, they have used AI. As you may know, if, Africa suffers from about 30 to 50%, what we call post-harvest loss in even the tomato we have produced. So after struggling to produce the tomato, we still lose about 30% of them through what we call post-harvest loss.
Mm-hmm.
But with AI, you can now preserve that loss and maybe increase the value chain, increase processing, increase preservation of that tomato so that it doesn't get lost.
Mm-hmm.
I was telling someone the other day, here in Kenya, there's a lot of, go to Meru, go to Kisii, you see a lot of avocado pears falling down for the dogs, for the chicken to eat. And yet, if you go to California, a plate of avocado soup is so delicious that people pay up to $20, $30 to have an avocado soup. And yet here we use leg to price it in Kisii. You see? Mm-hmm. So we have a lot that this can help us to not only in production, but like he said, we are covering the entire 4 components of food security, including the availability, which means production, the access, which means ability to get the food and eat, utilization, ability to eat nutritious ones, and stability. Stability can be through predicting, like the locusts that usually invade East Africa. With AI, you can know when they are coming. You can know when they are coming and plan ahead to, not prevent, but tackle it. Not the firefighting approach when they have descended on the crops, then you start attacking. No. But you know it ahead of time, you prepare for them. As they are coming, you are combating them. Mm-hmm. So that is the issue of impact. Impact, it will be too early to measure reasonable impact because we are still at the deployment stage on this project. Thank you.
Yeah, I mean, also, I am learning so much from speaking to you, the components of food security. You said availability,
access, food availability, which includes like production. So when food is produced, it makes it to be available. Access, ability to get it from the market.
Yes.
You can have food, but you can't get access to them. So the food supply chain, all those transportation, all those things are part of access. And you know how much food we lose through transportation.
Yeah.
But so access, then utilization. Utilization now is ability to add value to those crops. So that people, if you don't eat the fresh tomato now for your stew, you can eat the tomato puree when it has been processed and canned. You can eat it next year. So that is utilization. Then stability means to make food stable through policy, making, for instance, giving loans to farmers, giving smartphones to farmers to be able to monitor weather, because it is only through smartphones that you can get some of this information that we disseminate. It can be through prediction, like you'll be able to know. We have developed a technology, for instance, that you can use to know how much rain can fall in your location from January to December. So through that phone, through that app, we call it Land PKS, you can know the amount of rainfall from January to December in any particular geographical space. We have used it to train people in Samburu areas, and we have trained across 5 countries in Africa. And farmers can now use it to know when they expect rainfall and when rainfall will not be there. And then they plan their farm enterprises as to production, or, it will be bad that you go and cultivate, taking the rain is stable, and then you don't see the rain. But with the app, you can know the quantity that can fall at any particular time. You can know your soil qualities. You can know the type of soil you have. And we have developed a soil crop matrix to match soils to the type of crops that we perform better in those soils. So there are a lot of technologies available to help in stability. There are other components, there are other segments, like some people talk about food sovereignty. Food sovereignty, trying to say this should be the fifth component. Sovereignty means, okay, you don't force me to take wheat, because if you go to Ethiopia, if there is no teff in Ethiopia, then there is no food in Ethiopia. If you come to if you come to Kenya, if there's no maize, then there's no food. And there's a new call, especially just because I live in Kenya, to demaize Kenya, because one of the greatest challenges of food security in Kenya is maize. So the earlier we start diversifying our food culture to embrace cassava, to embrace sweet potato, to embrace plantain, the better for us in Kenya than depending on maize. Because if anything happens to maize, then we are done. Thank you.
Thank you. That actually takes me back to an episode I did on food sovereignty, and there was an issue about seeds, and there was a court case in government where they were saying how we used to farm in the past, where we would exchange seeds, is now a crime. And there was actually a campaign against it. And in your feedback about impact, and I understand it's only been 2 years, which I believe opens an opportunity for us to come back after 2 years to hear how much has changed. Or before, possibly. And so I'll invite Joel to speak on, some of the challenges that you have experienced, especially working with those innovators within Africa with regards to adoption, and also how the technology itself is received by the people that it's supposed to serve. So what are some of the challenges you have experienced?
Thank you very much. One of the key challenges feedback we got from the grantees is initial fear about AI and its displacement of jobs. The farmers have been interested to know, if this AI system comes, how will those who do all the manual things or who contribute to the value chain, how would they be sustained? Would they leave? And the fears that technology will always displace women. That is another fear, that the more we have technology, the more there is a gender divide. So that has been some fear. And another fear has been, or another challenge is housing data to get data banks across Africa, where we can have a one-stop shop to get data for training models for specific conditions of crop, pest, and others. So this also have been a challenge that ATPS is overcoming. For the data bank, ATPS now have a data storage or data bank where all the data are housed, because you pay for data banks. They really cost a lot of money. So these are the challenges. Then another challenge is effective monitoring. Implementing robust projects like this will require effective monitoring. So we are trying also to make sure that that challenge is overcome. And so we are intentional about making sure these challenges. But in project implementation, there are challenges, or we call them risk, that you can overcome, and there are those you cannot overcome. But overall, we are happy running the project, and we can see some things taking place on the ground.
Right. And I mean, that's how everything has to start. You have to start from somewhere. So thank you for sharing that with us. And I hope as you go, you'll keep, making adjustments based on the new experiences that you have. And now moving to collaboration. I believe this particular project is not a standalone. You're collaborating with other partners. And I just want you to bring our audience to understand exactly how every stakeholder is playing in making sure that these projects actually go to the places that they need to be.
Yeah. If you go to the SDG number 17, talks about partnerships.
Yes.
And so at the ATPS, we also take cognizance of that, the need for partnership. So we know that AI, being an emerging technology, will need a lot of partnerships. And that's why we try to reach out to organizations that will provide some complementary roles to the work that ATPS is doing. But permit me to talk about the first partnership starts with our donor, the people that are bringing the money. And we want to use the opportunity to thank the International Development Research Center in Canada, the Royal Crown, for making the funds that we are in partnership with CEDA, Sweden, for making available the funds that we are using to undertake this massive project in Africa. Last time I was on national television in KBC, that was last week, and they were asking me, why is it that the fund is coming from outside Africa? This could be a discussion for another day.
Mm-hmm.
But that boils down to what I'm talking about, policy, and the commitment that our national governments will need to make to support emerging technologies. So we thank IDRC and CEDA for making available the funds that we are using to undertake this project in Africa. Then, like I was saying before, we recognized ICIPE here in Nairobi, and Kumasi Hive, based in Ghana. Kumasi Hive has commercialized the artificial intelligence and linked it to so many other sectors like agriculture, transport, and so on. And because they have already had experience in translating the research output into innovations, and innovation come with money. You can have a product, and it can only be an innovation when it's in the market yielding money for you. Mm-hmm. So we recognize the deep knowledge from ICIPE in this sector as well. So we are collaborating with both of them, and both have been so wonderful in playing the synergetic role that we expect from them to support the research policy and practice work that ATPS is doing in this AI, advancing AI, homegrown AI in Africa. So the partnership amongst these two organizations that I've mentioned, and it is because of what they offer on the table to complement the work of the ATPS.
Great. I'm glad you mentioned the SDG number 17. Yes. That really speaks about partnerships. And of course, there has to be different moving pieces to make everything happen.
Exactly.
So thank you for sharing that. And to Joel, of course, Africa has always been seen as a continent that is, struggling through many challenges. And very recently, I was part of the Africa Climate Summit, and we had a youth segment. And what we were trying to do is really paint a different narrative about Africa, showing that we are solutions providers and not just victims, whether it's on climate change issues, whether it's poverty, etc. And of course, all of us are thinking about how we can improve the quality of life. And I think the world will be surprised at just how knowledgeable we are and how much we have to offer. So, in your experience with the project, would you say AI can be, a bridge to where we want to be, especially with, of course, responsible and homegrown solutions and innovations? Like, what role do you feel that this particular artificial intelligence could play in taking us to the place that we want to be and painting a different narrative of what Africa is?
Thank you, Abigail. I can say confidently that my belief in Africa has doubled, seeing what Africans can do. And this belief is buttressed by the developments that have taken place and also the interactions. ATPS, ably directed by the executive director sitting down here, believes in Africa. Dr. Nicholas believes that we should, allow Africans develop what Africans need. So we were intentional by making sure that the decolonial approach was followed, a demand-driven approach, which is what will take Africa to where it is. It's not just developing the AI tools, but developing AI tools that are prioritized to meet the needs of Africa. And so we interacting with the people. It will interest you to note that right from the start of the project, we were intentional by making sure that the teams were equitably distributed. It was not just research. Before we always have research. So we had research member of the team, we have the private sector, and we have the civil society actor in a team for each of the grantees that we had. So we could see that synergy working out. So Africa has the potentials once we can ensure that synergy, not working independently, but working as a team. The researchers working with the private sector actors, with the civil society actors, because each person contributes something on the table. The civil society actors have worked with the locals and also know how to mainstream some of these things around. So because of this, we can see a pathway to acceptability that has increased so much. Because let me just share our experience just yesterday and a question we posed to the women, because basically the women, 20 of them, we asked them, this project, you have been taken along in this project since September 2022, and now, how do you feel? And they said, we now feel belonged. We now feel that our voices are being heard, that the technology we want to use is our technology and not their technology. That was their statement. And they were so joyous that said, are we coming back? Are we going to leave them? We said, we are not leaving. So they're excited because for the first time, we have an approach we call design by inclusion. Where do people contribute to development? Where do people influence what you are producing? And that is what is being done. And so with that approach, I believe that we will get there. Especially I pray that also the governments, the people in power, understand the need to take the people along. There was someone that said that when they want to go to power, they come for the people. But when they get to power, they leave the people. So if we recognize that the people matters in any process, we will get there. So I believe seriously that we have the capability and we have everything to make Africa great. And the youths are the strength of Africa.
Absolutely, absolutely. We say we I don't know how big the population is, but I'm imagining it's about 60 to 70% of young people who occupy the continent of Africa. And I agree with you that we are the future of Africa. And taking you back to your experience working with the women, in this line of work I always hear conversations on indigenous knowledge or homegrown knowledge, and I want to understand whether it has had a role in any way with your project in how you design or how you come up with solutions, especially for the farmers. Have you interacted with, this kind of indigenous knowledge with regards to how they farm, and then does it form basis for those technologies that you develop?
Yeah, thank you very much. Yes, the grantees have made sure that their developments have centered around what the farmer needs. And the farmer have also contributed to how the technology should be developed. For instance, the IoT system in Malawi is such that the farmer joins in data input and data collection. And the farmer is well trained to also interpret data.
Mm-hmm.
The IoT irrigation system in Nigeria is designed that if there is no data, you can use SMS to activate your irrigation system right from your home.
Mm-hmm.
So through SMS, you can receive the nutrient content of the soil in your farm. Through SMS, you can receive the nitrogen, phosphorus, potassium, soil moisture, temperature in your farm. And also through that SMS, you can activate a mechanical valve. It's actually a mechatronic valve that will start irrigating your farm. So the farmers were specific that because of the low data infrastructure, they don't really have this network. So they said, we will also want you, as you're developing this, to make sure that we can use the available infrastructure to access. And that is how the voice of the farmer. So it was not like just a cloud deployment, cloud monitoring. So they can also access information via SMS. So that is how we did it.
Great. Thank you so much for sharing that. And I think it's important to mention that all these projects have actually been developed here in Africa. And I think it's very important to note that these are solutions that have been done by people here in Africa. And of course, we could speak about AI the whole day, but we actually have to wrap up. And so, as we finalize, to you, Dr. Nicholas, how can people be involved, or how can people support the work that you're already doing? Because as you've said, it's quite an emerging sector or an emerging issue, and of course people are still not very, I even speak for myself, we still don't really understand how AI works and the technology, and I believe there has to be a platform where we can learn more and even interact with the work that you do. So how can we find you? How can we reach you?
Thank you very much. Already people are getting engaged. You can hear him, Engineer Joel, talk about the design by inclusion work that we are currently doing in Nigeria.
Mm-hmm.
So these are the people, especially these are the targeted beneficiaries of this technology. So they're already participating. They're already giving out their voices, and they are happy that they are part of this transformation that is happening. And once you have their voice or their voices included in the technology development, what I can assure you as an extensionist is that technology, they will see it as their own, and they will grab it, they will work with it, they will promote it with their friends, and before you know it, you get mass adoption. So already people are getting involved. And this is just in Nigeria, but in all the countries where we have these STEM projects, that is the same way the same approach we are using to ensure that people's voices are included in the development of this homegrown responsible AI. Again, we have held so many webinars around this AI, which we promote, which we advertise, and we have had always a lot of people joining to learn about the AI and how it can be developed and deployed. A lot of partners have also used the same platform that we are using to disseminate what we call knowledge exchange, knowledge management about this AI, because we know it's not yet so popular. So we need to talk about it. So people get engaged, even on social media. I told you that last week I was at KBC talking about the same AI. And ever since then, I've had a lot of calls, people calling to say, that's good, we want to work with you. We continue to do this all the time, but the key stakeholder, and I mean, some of us have been invited. I've been invited to several events to give a keynote paper regarding AI. I just did one even last week, the same last week, for the Africa Leaks, talking about AI in agriculture. The most important stakeholder in this transformation journey will be the government and the private sector. Government, because we want them to set the pace. We want them to create what we call enabling environment for this AI research, innovation, practice to happen. And I can tell you that not many African governments have keyed into this. As we speak, out of the 54 African countries on the continent, it's only 2 countries that have AI policy. That is Rwanda and Ghana. And you see, if you don't have AI policy, how will you allow people who have the skills to develop drones? Let me use drones, because our project in Cape Verde is also developing drones. In Kenya here, you can't fly a drone. If you fly it, it will be shut down because the policy has not allowed it. But in Rwanda, neighboring Rwanda, they are using drones to deliver healthcare services to areas that are not accessible by road. So, because they have a guideline, a framework for the deployment of the drone in their country. So, the government is very important as a stakeholder. They need to do convenings. They need to convenings like workshops. They need to support organizations like us to even conduct workshops, talk about AI across sectors and how it can be deployed. They need to now mainstream it into their policies within the currently we have STI policy, STI Act. See how they bring agencies responsible to talk about this, because you see, we cannot be left behind. If you say it doesn't concern you, by the time these technologies are developed in Rwanda and you have to buy it, it will be too costly for you. So the earlier you join now to work with a local capacity, the better for you. The private sector is another important stakeholder. We've talked about farmers at lower level, but the private sector, industrialists need to invest. But you remember, their investment will be driven by how the enabling environment is. If there are importation of some infrastructure that may be used for this AI development, and it is, you have high tax on such infrastructure, it will be a disincentive for such a private sector, for such a businessman. And I will use one example to illustrate this. The International Finance Corporation, IFC, sometime in the early 2000s, had supported Ghana and Kenya on solar home system development. Because of the enabling environment provided during the Kibaki regime. There was a kind of zero tax on the importation of solar materials, as against the nearly 30 to 40% tax on the importation of similar solar materials in Ghana. This has led to a massive adoption of solar home system in Kenya, because investors moved in, brought the materials, and people. So the dissemination, the adoption of solar home system in Kenya actually became the highest in the whole of Africa. In short, if you compare it with per capita, it was even higher than China. Do you understand? So you find that the government must play a role by showing their goodwill. That these things are working well in Rwanda is because the president, you can hear even from him, talk about science, technology, and innovation. This, even Kenya, need to begin to think of developing a separate ministry of science, technology, and innovation, because as at the moment, we don't have it. That would be a discussion for another day. But this is very important because that has helped many other countries to focus on STI development. Kenya is doing well anyway in the area of investment, because in the 1980 Lagos Plan of Action, where the heads of state in Africa agreed that 1% of their GDP should be invested in research and development. Many years, 50-something years later, as we are, there's no country that has done that. 1% of their GDP. What we have, Kenya is among the top countries investing up to 0.78 or 0.8% of their GDP. And they are targeting through the Constitution, Vision 2030, to invest up to 2%, which is very good. And this is directly correlated to innovativeness. The more you have research, you have money in research, the more outputs, the more products and services that you get. So I've used this to illustrate it so that our government can put in more interest, talk about AI, invest resources, build capacity, build infrastructure, and make policies and regulations that will guide the development, deployment, and scaling of homegrown and responsible artificial intelligence for agriculture and food systems in Africa. Thank you.
I think that message is home. That message is very much home.
Thank you.
Calling for governments to create an enabling environment for, AI and also every other thing to prosper. And to you, Joel, as we wrap up, being that you work very closely with these innovators and on this project, what would you say is the future of Africa's food and food systems or agriculture with AI in play?
Well, again, I would say the future is bright, and it's still dependent on what Dr. Nicholas mentioned. You can see the funding that drives this process is coming from external. And someone queries, why will a father allow another father to feed his family? It is only an irresponsible head of family that will allow another person to supply food, and he thinks he will have control over his family. And that is why today you can see the high rate of youths leaving Africa. So for there to be a responsible development, deployment, and scale of artificial intelligence in agriculture, which is very, very important, agriculture and food systems. Because whether you are a researcher, whether you are a broadcaster, whether you are an oil driller, whether you're getting oil from the ground, you must eat to get the energy to work. So agriculture is the driver. We don't doubt that. So there must be an intentional investment in research and innovation. there must be clear pathway to fund local development and deployment of AI. We cannot continue to depend on foreign donors who will also determine likely how we run our affairs. So the future is bright, but we must drive the process, leveraging on what we have, the strength of the youths. I want to thank the youths of Africa for what they are doing, and leverage on the women who are eager to solve our problems. We want to support them at all levels to make sure that we get there. The future is bright indeed.
Great. Well, thank you so much. This was such a lovely conversation, and I believe it's only the beginning. And I hope our listeners will gain more interest in this
Sure.
particular conversation, and we will be back here in less than a year to talk about impact, maybe.
Thank you, Abigail.
Great. Thank you so much for your time. It was lovely having you. See you on the next one. Thank you.
Thank you very much.
Thank you.